Hi folks, John Cordisco back again. Another game from round 2 of the Bilbao Chess Masters Final 2014. Pretty good game here. We got two top players, Masters-Aronian, number 3 in the world from Armenia, and Ruslan Ponomariov, former FIDE world champion from Ukraine. Let's get to it. Aronian is white, Ponomariov is black. It's going to be a King's Indian, of course, which is always fun. Knight, bishop, g3. Another way to go about it is e4. And then after c5, d5, and then castle. That's another interesting setup. After g3, black castles, fianchettos, and then c6. I've been playing that move a little bit in these similar positions myself. It's more or less to control, or have some say over the d5 square. And b5 as well. Castles. Bishop f5. Bishop g5 by Aronian. And Ponomariov decides to kick the bishop. Bishop comes back to e3. Don't have to worry about keeping this pawn behind, of course, because the bishop is here. Your bishop's already out. Knight a6. Queen c1. Of course, the king has to come up to protect the pawn. To move the pawn here instead, it would be just foolishness, frankly. It would weaken the king's position too much. h7, h3. I think that's more to control this square here, to be honest with you. Maybe this bishop coming here might be a little annoying. Rook to b8. g4. Here we go. Crazy King's Indian stuff where the pawns on both the castled kings start moving around. This makes for an interesting game to be sure. Bishop goes back to d7, but I think the damage is already done. Let's see how Ponomariov, if he can take advantage of it now. Queen to d2. You can get Fritz computer on, Fritz 13 off screens. Almost a half-point advantage for white. We'll call it even. Knight c7. a4. b5. a takes. c takes. b3, just reinforcing the the c4 pawn. So b takes. And b takes. And that pretty much clears out the open file for black's rook on the b file, but takes a lot of the play away from the queen side as well, I think. Rook to b4. Queen to d3. It's about a pawn and a quarter advantage now for white. White's creeped up a little bit, but frankly, I don't see how he's creeped up, to be honest with you. I mean, he's got black's a little bit backed up, but that's usually the rule in King's Indian. a6, just to guard the pawn. Now that Mike can guard this pawn. d5. Now that controls a lot of space, good spaces here and here, but it makes this pawn backwards. So let's see how that works out. e6, knight, e takes, c takes. Now they both have isolated d pawns. In fact, I think I heard a quote one time from Victor Korchnoi, the old World Championship challenger, that if you're worried about an isolated d-pawn, just give up chess. Rook to e8. Now white decides to bring both rooks over to the queen side. I'm going to get some action over here. Rook takes, rook takes. Now white owns that file. And that brings up white's points to almost 2 points now, 1.75 ahead for white. And frankly, I just don't see how. I don't think black's that bad. Queen takes is worth considering. Then after h5, knight c6, and queen to c8 would be worth looking at. But that would be much better for black than what happened. Knight to b5. Knight to c6. Again. Bishop takes, pawn takes, knight takes, queen takes. and knight to d5. Now ask if he wants to take that bishop now, it's going to cause a double e-pawn for white. He moves the queen, takes, and then d5. Didn't want to take the pawn. And black goes d5. Excuse me. Now, but prior to that, it's down by less of a pawn advantage for white. And I think Aronian misplayed this a little bit. And I think that d5 move, frankly, was a mistake. I think queen to g5 or queen to e7 was much better. If he had gone queen to e7 after bishop, then d5, queen takes, it's actually better than what was played for a black, even with that passed pawn. Let's go back and look at that. d5, queen takes, queen e7, king h1. It's a different move order. Rook d8, queen c4, and bishop e5. You got to get this bishop to control this diagonal, and especially this next space. It's less than a pawn advantage now for white. That'll be less than 3/4 of a pawn now. And I think black's back in the game. Rook to f1. I don't know if I'd go against that, keep that rook over on the queen side with that pawn there, but rook to f1 is the computer's first choice. Interesting might have been queen takes a6, and then after queen to h4, queen c4, king g7. Interesting. Rook stuck on this back rank because of this mate threat. Anyway, after rook to f1, king to g7. Why it was important for that king to be on g7, I really haven't figured that out, and I've been over this game a little bit. Bishop to d5. I think slowly but surely Aronian's just slightly outplaying Ponomariov. If he had taken the pawn again, this scenario, queen g3, it looks scary. But queen takes check, king to h8, and it's a draw. The king just goes to g1, and he escapes. After bishop d5, f6. I think he's just trying to consolidate that dark squared bishop there, so he can move the queen and not have the queen babysit the bishop. Rook to b1. This looks scary for black, but I think it's still savable at this point. Rook b8. Trying to trade. He doesn't, though. He forces the trade of rooks. And now the pawn's on b7 instead of c6. Much different. But the queening square is a dark square now. And these guys are light squared bishop. Queen to d6. This is where I think Aronian miscues. Now, I know there was some time trouble in this game. I'm not sure if it was just Ponomariov, who's usually in time trouble. But I think it might have been a little bit on Aronian's part, because he should go bishop f3, bring the bishop back. He goes bishop to e4, and it's almost an even game now in the computer. After bishop f3, bishop g3, queen, and a5 was a much better choice for white. He goes bishop b4, and now, in time trouble, I think Ponomariov throws the game away. Queen to d1 check is the best move here. With even position, he goes a5. And now I think Ponomariov throws the game away. Queen to b5. Queen to d8. King to g2. Bishop comes back to stop the pawn. Queen c6. Queen e7. King f1. Bishop c7. If he had gone h2 instead, King E1 stops all that nonsense. After bishop C7, bishop D3. And now we're on move 42. There is no second time control. My understanding, it's a 30-second increment, so there's no second time control. And Ponomariov messes up and goes queen to D6. Now the game is just not savable. The computer has it an almost 5-point advantage. Queen E8, of course. Now it's kind of a sneaky attack here. Sometimes you just don't see that with a double attack. You're thinking of the queen, 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 but your queen coordinates with another piece that comes a lot more powerful. F5 to stop that. D5 might have been interesting. So after queen takes, king F8, queen takes, king D8, it's still lost. After F5, bishop C4, and now black is just doomed. Ponomariov. I remember I watched the game on ChessBase Live, and you could tell it was one of those deals where, and it happens to players like us, average players, I should say, where logically you know the game is over, but emotionally you don't know the game is over yet. And until those two things meet, you play on. King F6, queen checks, king to G5, G takes, queen checks. I mean, the game is over, and Ponomariov continues. I just think he's just disgusted and wants to play on. King. And now a really good move that's hard to see here. Really hard to see. Bishop E6. If queen takes, that's it. Game's over. It's a deflection move. So after bishop E6, bishop to D8, trying to give some protection on the king. Queen takes check, king to G3. Queen checks, king H4 again. King G2. Now we're looking at mating nets here. And this is where Ruslan Ponomariov as black resigns. Give you an idea what would have happened. Say queen takes the bishop. Queen, D5 check. It's over. We'll go through. It's kind of a neat mate. Queen checks. King G5. The other queen comes in. F6 for the king. Check. E6. Check. F6. And believe it or not, that's mate. So, poor Ruslan, he's lost 2 in a row now in the Bilbao Chess Masters Final 2014. This is round 2. Player of Ponomariov's caliber very rarely loses 2 in a row like that. So we'll see how he does in round 3. Anyway, that's a good win for Aronian. Maybe he can creep back closer to Caruana now. Now that Caruana has leapfrogged past him because of this Singfield Open, is now in very clear second. Anyway, folks, I want you all to remember, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
Tracy to kids. Tracy to kids. Come in, kids. Come in, kids. It's here at last, the new Dick Tracy two-way wrist radio that keeps you in constant touch with your buddies. Easy to work. Up antenna, switch on, press talk button, and you broadcast from room to room and even house to house. No wires needed, yet voices travel back and forth. Radio on the open road from one bike to another, or when out hiking.
Dad, I found a bear's cave.
Be right down, son.
The powerful, fully transistorized Dick Tracy two-way wrist radio is a real electronic instrument.
Make sure all the fellows get their A-OK Dick Tracy wrist radio so they can keep in touch. Over and out.
The one and only Dick Tracy wrist radio, wherever American toys are sold.